The open road has long been a symbol of American freedom. It promises an escape from the mundane, a connection with nature, and a journey of self-discovery. In the age of social media, this allure has been packaged and romanticized into what we now know as the van life movement. It is an aesthetic of sunsets, national parks, and carefree living, curated carefully for an audience of thousands. But behind the filters and the carefully edited captions, the reality of life in a confined space, miles from home, can be far more complex and, in rare instances, tragically dangerous. In the summer of 2021, the world watched in real time as a cross-country adventure transformed into a national mystery, and finally, a heartbreaking tragedy. The disappearance and death of Gabby Petito, known to her friends in the world. It was a case that bridged the gap between traditional law enforcement investigation and a new era of digital sleuthing. It highlighted the complexities of domestic relationships, the limitations of police intervention, and the enduring power of a family's fight for answers. This is not a story about sensationalism. It is an examination of the facts, the forensic timeline, and the systemic failures that allowed a young woman to vanish in plain sight. It is a look at how an investigation unfolded across state lines, involving the FBI, local police departments, and an army of internet observers. To understand the tragedy, we must first understand the context. Gabby Petito was a 22-year-old aspiring influencer, a young woman described by those who knew her as artistic, free-spirited, and deeply loving. She had a vision of documenting her travels, sharing her love for nature and art with the world. Her partner in this journey was Brian Laundrie, her fiancé. They had known each other since high school in New York, and their relationship had evolved into a plan to travel across the United States in a converted 2012 Ford Transit Connect van. The plan was ambitious. They would depart from New York, travel west, and visit some of the most iconic landscapes in North America, including the Badlands, Yellowstone, and Grand Teton National Park. On the 2nd of July 2021, they set out. For the first few weeks, their social media footprint told the story of a perfect adventure. There were photographs of smiling faces against breathtaking backdrops, videos of them kissing on rock formations, and captions that spoke of love and exploration. However, forensic psychologists and investigators know that social media is a highlight reel, not a documentary. While the images projected happiness, the reality of two people living in a space smaller than a standard bedroom, isolated from their support systems, was beginning to take a toll. The psychological pressure of such close quarters, combined with the stress of travel and financial constraints, can act as a pressure cooker. The first major crack in the facade appeared on the 12th of August 2021 in Moab, Utah. This date is crucial to the timeline and has been the subject of intense scrutiny by legal experts and domestic violence advocates. A concerned citizen dialed 911 to report a domestic dispute. The witness described seeing a male striking a female outside a collaborative workspace in town. Officers from the Moab City Police Department located the white Ford van speeding near the entrance to Arches National Park and initiated a traffic stop. The subsequent interaction was captured on police body-worn cameras, footage that would later be analyzed by millions around the world. In the footage, Gabby is visibly distressed, crying heavily, and struggling to compose herself. Brian appears calm, cooperative, and eager to explain the situation. The officers separated the couple to interview them individually. This is standard police procedure intended to prevent intimidation and allow each party to speak freely. During these interviews, a complex picture emerged. Gabby took blame for the altercation, stating she had been hitting Brian because she was frustrated. Brian claimed he pushed her away to create distance. The officers were left with a difficult decision. Under Utah law, if they determined that domestic violence had occurred, they were mandated to make an arrest. However, based on the statements provided at the scene, the officers categorized the incident not as domestic assault, but as a mental health break. The decision was made to separate the couple for the night. Brian was taken to a hotel, while Gabby remained with the van. No charges were filed. In hindsight, many experts have argued that this was a missed opportunity for intervention. The body language, the disparity in emotional states, and the witness report of a male striking a female suggested a dynamic that warranted a deeper investigation into potential intimate partner violence. Instead, they were allowed to continue their trip the next day. The couple left Moab and continued north toward Wyoming. The digital trail continued, but the frequency and tone of the communications began to shift. The last confirmed sighting of Gabby Petito alive was on the 27th of August 2021 at a restaurant in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Witnesses later reported seeing a couple matching their description involved in a heated argument, with the male acting aggressively toward the restaurant staff. Following this date, the communication from Gabby's phone became sporadic and unusual. Her parents, who were used to regular updates and FaceTime calls, received text messages that felt inconsistent with Gabby's voice. One text, sent on August 27th, referred to her grandfather by his first name, something Gabby never did. Another text, sent on August 30th, read simply, "No service in Yosemite." This message raised immediate red flags for investigators later. As Yosemite National Park is in California, hundreds of miles west of their last known location in Wyoming, it appeared to be an attempt to create a false timeline, a digital decoy to mislead anyone looking for her. The turning point in the timeline occurred on the 1st of September 2021. Brian Laundrie returned to his parents' home in North Port, Florida. He was driving the white Ford van. He was alone. For 10 days, the Petito family in New York tried desperately to reach Gabby and Brian. They called, they texted, and they reached out to the Laundrie family. They received no response. The silence was deafening. On September 11, unable to get answers and fearing the worst, Gabby's family filed a missing person report with the Suffolk County Police Department in New York. This filing triggered a multi-agency investigation that spanned the continent. The Northport Police Department in Florida immediately attempted to speak with Brian Laundrie. However, they encountered a legal wall. The United States Constitution, specifically the Fifth Amendment, protects individuals from self-incrimination. Brian Laundrie had retained legal counsel and exercised his right to remain silent. The police could not force him to speak, nor could they enter the home without a warrant based on probable cause. At this stage, Brian was not a suspect. He was a person of interest. This legal distinction is important. While his refusal to cooperate was deeply suspicious to the public and frustrating to the police, it was his legal right. The investigation shifted into high gear. The Northport Police, the FBI, and the Suffolk County Police began to piece together the timeline. But they weren't working alone. The case had exploded on social media. Platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter became hubs for digital detectives. While online speculation can often be harmful or misleading, in this case, it proved to be instrumental. A travel blogging family, known as Red, White, and Bethune, realized they had been in Grand Teton National Park around the same time as Gabby and Brian. They began reviewing their own dashcam footage from August 27th. Buried in the hours of video, they found it. The white Ford Transit van, parked on the side of a dirt road in the Spread Creek dispersed camping area. This was the breakthrough investigators needed. The footage provided precise GPS coordinates. It narrowed the search area from millions of acres of wilderness to a specific zone in the Bridger-Teton National Forest. On the 19th of September 2021, search teams scouring the area near the Spread Creek camping site made a somber discovery. Human remains were found consistent with the description of Gabby Petito. The location was remote, surrounded by sagebrush and pine trees, with the majestic Teton Range in the distance. The remains were transported to the Teton County Coroner's Office for analysis. Forensic pathology is a discipline that speaks for the dead. Through careful examination, the medical examiner determined the identity was indeed Gabby Petito. The autopsy results were released weeks later, providing the scientific conclusion to the mystery of her death. The cause of death was ruled as homicide by manual strangulation. The coroner noted that the body had been outside for 3 to 4 weeks, a timeline that aligned perfectly with the last known sighting in late August. This clinical finding dispelled any theories of an accident or a fall. This was a targeted act of violence. While the discovery of Gabby's remains brought a tragic end to the search for her, the hunt for the perpetrator was just beginning, and the situation in Florida had complicated significantly. On September 17, days before Gabby's body was found, Brian Laundrie's parents reported him missing. They told police that he had left the house on September 13 to go hiking in the Carlton Reserve, a massive nature preserve near their home, and had not returned. This sparked one of the most difficult manhunts in recent Florida history. The Carlton Reserve is not a typical park. It is over 24,000 acres of dense, unforgiving wilderness. It is a landscape of swamp, saw palmetto, and pine flatwoods. It is home to alligators, venomous snakes, and during the rainy season, much of it is waist-deep in water. For weeks, law enforcement teams utilized swamp buggies, drones, canine units, and divers to scour the reserve. The conditions were grueling. The water levels were historically high, meaning that evidence or a body could be submerged and hidden from view. The FBI took the lead, designating the search area based on intelligence and the location of Brian's abandoned vehicle. The public scrutiny on the Laundrie family was intense. Protesters gathered outside their home, demanding answers. The narrative became a national conversation about accountability and the actions of Brian's parents during the critical window between his return to Florida and his disappearance. The breakthrough in the manhunt came only after the environmental conditions changed. By mid-October, the water levels in the Carlton Reserve began to recede. Areas that had been underwater for weeks were now accessible. On the 20th of October 2021, Brian Laundrie's parents, who were assisting law enforcement by showing them trails Brian frequented, directed authorities to a specific area known as Myakkahatchee Creek Environmental Park, adjacent to the reserve. There, investigators found personal items belonging to Brian, including a backpack and a notebook. Nearby, they discovered skeletal human remains. The condition of the remains required advanced forensic identification methods. Dental records were used to positively identify the deceased as Brian Laundrie. A subsequent anthropological examination was conducted to determine the cause of death. The findings concluded that Brian died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The timeline suggested he had died shortly after entering the reserve in mid-September. But the most significant piece of evidence was not the body, but the notebook found nearby. Despite having been submerged in water, forensic experts at the FBI laboratory were able to treat the document and recover the writing inside. This is a testament to the capabilities of modern document forensics, using spectral imaging and careful preservation techniques to retrieve information from damaged materials. In January 2022, the FBI released the contents of the notebook. In it, Brian Laundrie had written a confession. He claimed responsibility for ending Gabby's life. The text was a mix of confession and attempted justification. He wrote about an unexpected tragedy, claiming Gabby had been injured and that he ended her life to stop her suffering. However, criminal profilers and legal experts analyzed the confession with skepticism. The details in the notebook did not align with the forensic evidence of strangulation found by the coroner in Wyoming. Strangulation is a deliberate, prolonged act that requires significant force and time. It is rarely a mercy killing or an accident. The notebook was viewed by authorities as a final attempt by the perpetrator to control the narrative, even in death. With the death of the sole suspect, the criminal case was effectively closed. There would be no trial, no cross-examination, and no verdict read by a jury. But the legal fallout continued. The Petito family filed a civil lawsuit against the Laundrie parents and their attorney. The suit centered on the allegation that Brian's parents knew Gabby was dead and knew the location of her body while the search was ongoing, yet chose to remain silent and even issued statements through their lawyer hoping for Gabby's safe return. This legal battle raised profound questions about the moral and legal obligations of parents when their adult child commits a crime. One of the most contentious pieces of evidence in the civil suit was a letter written by Brian's mother, colloquially dubbed The burn after reading letter. The existence of this letter suggested a level of prior knowledge or an offer of assistance to hide a crime, though the defense argued it was unrelated to the murder. The case of Gabby Petito left a legacy that extends far beyond the headlines. It sparked a massive conversation about domestic violence and the signs of coercive control. The Gabby Petito Foundation was established by her family to support organizations that assist victims of domestic abuse and to help families of missing persons. Furthermore, the case forced a societal reckoning regarding missing white woman syndrome. This is a term used by media critics to describe the disproportionate media coverage given to missing upper-middle-class white women compared to missing persons of color. During the search for Gabby, the intense media spotlight on Wyoming helped investigators discover the remains of at least one other missing person who had been overlooked. Gabby's family has since used their platform to advocate for equal coverage for all missing persons, regardless of race or background. From a forensic standpoint, the case demonstrated the power of digital evidence. The timeline was reconstructed not just by police work, but by cell tower triangulation, financial transaction records, and the metadata of social media posts. It showed that in the modern world, it is nearly impossible to travel without leaving a digital footprint. The investigation also highlighted the limitations of law enforcement when dealing with domestic disputes on the road. The Moab incident is now used as a case study in police training academies, teaching officers to look beyond the surface of a he said, she said argument and to recognize the subtle indicators of a victim in distress, such as the fawning response where a victim takes blame to de-escalate the situation. Ultimately, the story of Gabby Petito is a tragedy of a life cut short. It is a reminder that the images we see on screens are curated fragments of reality. It serves as a somber warning about the dangers of isolation and the vital importance of recognizing the signs of abuse. Justice, in its purest form, was not served in a courtroom. Brian Laundrie's suicide denied the family the opportunity to hear a guilty verdict or see a sentence handed down. However, the truth was uncovered. The combined efforts of law enforcement, forensic science, and the public ensured that Gabby was found and returned to her family, and that the person responsible was identified beyond a shadow of a doubt. As we reflect on this case, we are left to consider the fragility of safety and the importance of vigilance. If you or someone you know is in a relationship that feels unsafe, or if you see signs of control and isolation, do not remain silent. The difference between a domestic dispute and a tragedy can often be a single intervention. In a world where we are more connected than ever, how do we ensure that we are truly looking out for one another? That is the question Gabby's legacy leaves us to answer.